One afternoon, the whole harbor burst into laughter when Harper, the poor mechanic, hauled in a rusted, decayed ship. A man filming shouted, "$11,000 for that junk." The clip spread quickly, and everyone mocked her. Harper lowered her head, but she gripped her mother's old handkerchief tightly in her hand. That night, as she stepped alone onto the deck, amidst the groaning metal, she discovered a strange gap beneath the rotting wooden floor. From the darkness, a cold gust rose, as if the ship was guarding a secret never revealed. Rain poured over Clearwater. Water hammered down on the rusted deck, leaving streaks like diluted blood across the steel corpse. Harper strained, pulling hard on the heavy rusted chain, dragging the massive Aurora Belle, thousands of tons of dead weight, closer to the pier. Each grind of the gears echoed across the harbor, like the wail of an ancient beast. A crowd gathered in the downpour, phones raised, recording lights flashing. Laughter mixed with whistles. One man shouted loud enough to rise above the thunder, "$11,000 for a heap of scrap." Crazy girl. The jeers spread, carried by the rain into a cold chorus. Harper did not answer. She pulled harder, her shoulder bleeding where the rope had cut into her skin. Wet hair clung to her face, calloused hands trembling but refusing to let go. In her mind, her mother's frail voice whispered from the sickbed, weak but clear. "Long ago, ships in Clearwater carried dreams, my dear. Never forget that memory kept her steady, even as cruel laughter stabbed at her ears." To them, Aurora Belle was nothing but junk. To Harper, it was the last doorway to hold on to a dream. A sleek black car pulled up quietly as the ship finally tilted against the dock. The face of Mr. Baxter, the well-known scrap dealer, appeared through the window. He didn't need to shout. He simply smirked, eyes dripping with disdain as he watched Harper's every move. People said Baxter had wanted Aurora Belle for years, planning to buy it cheaply and sell it for scrap. Now, he watched a poor girl willingly throw away everything on what he called a useless carcass. That night, the clip of the scene hit the internet. Thousands of comments exploded within hours. The mad woman of Clearwater. 11,000 for rust. The glowing words on phone screens cut like arrows, every tap another wound. Harper returned to her small garage, a narrow room reeking of grease and gasoline. Bills piled high on the table, a red stamped warning from the bank glaring up at her. From the next room, her mother coughed, voice hoarse as she called her name. Harper stepped in and clasped her mother's frail hand. The woman smiled weakly, whispering again the old line about ships that once carried dreams. Harper clenched the worn handkerchief her mother had left her, its frayed cloth now her only anchor in the storm. That night, she returned alone to Aurora Belle. The Cavita harbor lay silent, only the wind lashing the masts. She walked along the deck, flashlights sweeping across cracked planks. Amid the rhythm of falling rain, Harper suddenly froze. Near the rail, faint carvings emerged under the light beam on damp wood. Not natural cracks, strange markings shaped like tiny arrows, strung together like a crude map. She knelt, traced them with her finger, rain sliding down her cheek. Her heart pounded. Had someone left these marks on purpose? A gust roared across, dragging a long groan deep inside the hull. The sound was heavy, not the ordinary cry of wind. Harper looked up, her whole body shivering. The storm hid the strange noise, but Harper knew what she had heard, a whisper from the past. Aurora Belle, the ship the whole town had called a corpse, had never truly been silent. News of the crazy girl who bought a rusted ship spread across Clearwater. The clip of Harper struggling in the rain racked up hundreds of thousands of views. A tabloid headline read bluntly, $11,000 for a floating corpse. The name Harper Lane became the town's punchline. On Tuesday morning, a bank clerk knocked at the garage carrying a stack of warnings. If Harper didn't pay within 2 weeks, her shop would be seized. The mailman avoided her eyes, leaving quickly as if madness were contagious. That afternoon, a shiny black Cadillac stopped by the dock. Baxter stepped out, umbrella wide, shoes untouched by dirt. The crowd buzzed. He looked Harper up and down, his eyes full of mockery. His voice rang cold, loud enough for the whole dock to hear. Sell it, girl. That ship's only good for scrap. If not, the bank will take everything you own. Then he pulled out a white envelope and dropped it on the rusted rail. The number inside was insultingly low. Harper didn't touch it. Her hand gripped the wet handkerchief tighter, eyes blazing despite the gulf of power between them. When night fell, the harbor belonged only to the waves. Harper carried a flashlight and a toolbox to prove Aurora Belle was more than scrap. She retraced the carvings on the deck, measuring each line. Her mechanic's instincts noticed how the marks followed the edge of a metal seam. Maybe beneath lay a hidden compartment. She knelt, wrench in hand, loosening corroded bolts one by one. Muscles strained, sweat mixed with rain. Finally, the plate gave way, revealing a narrow cavity. Inside lay an old notebook, leather cover damp and faded. Harper flipped it open. Scribbled words emerged. Aurora's treasure is not gold. Her pulse leapt. This wasn't madness. Someone before her had known and left a trace. On Thursday, the wind howled. Waves slammed Aurora Belle, and the hull groaned under the storm. Harper clung to the deck, still searching for clues. In the torrent, she slipped. A jagged shard of steel ripped her arm. Blood streamed into the rain, soaking the handkerchief tied tight. Pain seared, but she pressed on, following the carvings to the captain's quarters. The door loomed heavy, locked tight. Harper pressed her ear, as if something behind it was guarding whispers of the past. Outside, thunder cracked. In the shadows, Baxter stood far off beneath his umbrella, watching. He didn't need to act. He believed the ship would swallow Harper, leaving him the wreck to claim cheaply. But Harper stood firm. Her blood-stained hand rested on the iron door. She didn't know what lay beyond. She only knew this was the one path left to prove her mother's dream hadn't died with the storm of ridicule. A lightning bolt tore across the sky, flooding the deck with white glare. Aurora Belle loomed like a colossal phantom rising from the sea, and Harper, small but unyielding, was the only one daring to listen to its call. The rain stopped, but the deck of the Aurora Belle was still damp and cold, like the skin of a corpse not yet dried. Harper returned at dawn, her arm crudely bandaged with the blood-stained handkerchief. The wound throbbed sharply each time she gripped the wrench, but her eyes were steadier than ever. She stepped up to the captain's door. The lock was stiff, heavy. Harper braced the flashlight, bent down to inspect. It was an old spring latch mechanism, something a pair of hands trained on farm engines like hers could read in seconds. She slid a thin screwdriver into the gap, pressed lightly, and turned with precision. The click rang out, deep in the dark hallway, like the ship's heartbeat answering back. The door swung open, dust clouding the air. Harper stepped inside. The captain's quarters were frozen. Cracked leather chairs, yellowed maps, a bar layered in dust. Unlike the rest of the Aurora Belle, this place had been preserved as if it held a private secret. Her flashlight swept across a corner. A dried plant pot remained, with only brittle roots left. Harper knelt, hand digging into the crumbly soil. Her fingers touched something hard. She pulled it out, a bronze key, green with corrosion, heavy in her palm. When she wiped it quickly with the handkerchief, faint engravings emerged. Eleanor. Harper's heart stopped. That was her mother's name. The key had existed long before Harper set foot on the ship, yet it bore the name of the woman who had inspired her. Her hand trembled, cold sweat breaking, but her eyes burned bright. It felt as if her mother were guiding her. She turned, searching for the fitting lock. Behind the bar, a panel of wood stood out. Harper pressed her hand, shoved. The wood shifted, revealing a slit. She slid the key in, twisted. A long metallic screech echoed. Then the wall slid aside, revealing darkness. Harper stepped forward, foot landing on rotten planks. A thunderous crack split the air. The floor gave way, dragging her down. Her body crashed against broken beams, dust bursting. She barely caught the railing edge with her bleeding arm. The flashlight tumbled, spinning into the shadows below. Her heart pounded wildly, breath ragged. In that instant, the laughter from the dock, Baxter's threats, the bank's warnings, all collided in her mind. But Harper clenched her teeth, hauled herself up. The jagged wood tore deeper into her flesh, but she finally collapsed onto the floor, gasping. Fear turned into a fiercer resolve. If this ship wanted to test her, she would answer. She grabbed the flashlight and shone it down. A spiral iron staircase appeared, descending into the ship's belly. Cold air pulsed upward in waves, carrying the smell of metal and time. Harper placed her foot on the first step. The iron groaned, trembling like a warning, but she didn't back away. Each step matched her heartbeat, declaring, the Aurora Belle was not a corpse. It was leading her to a hidden truth. The stairwell was narrow, damp, and stretching as if endless. Harper descended, her shadow stretching long across stained steel walls. At the bottom, a thick iron door loomed, fitted with a mechanical wheel, crusted with white salt deposits. She pressed her hand against it, metal icy enough to pierce her skin. Harper stood still. The key engraved with her mother's name was still in her pocket, the torn handkerchief still wrapped around her arm. Everything had led her here, and she knew. Behind this door lay something that would change everything. The wheel was unbearably heavy. Harper braced her shoulders and turned it notch by notch, the shriek of metal reverberating through the corridor like the roar of a long, dormant ship. When the final lock clicked, the steel door shook violently, then swung open. A rush of cold air burst out, carrying the scent of aged wood and sea salt, raising goosebumps across her skin. Her beam cut through the darkness, reflecting off rows of wooden crates stacked to the ceiling. Each one was sealed tight with wax or bronze bolts. Harper stepped inside, her boots echoing on the steel floor. The air was thick, heavy with silence, as if centuries of memory were waiting to be awakened. She pried open the first crate. Layers of oilcloth peeled back to reveal a painting. The colors were still vivid, brushstrokes soft and alive. In the bottom corner, a signature gleamed clear, Norman Rockwell. Harper gasped. This wasn't some distant European relic. This was America's memory, the man who had painted the simple dreams of millions of families. Shaking, she opened the next crate. A stack of papers bound in leather, yellowed with age but bold print still legible. A Civil War speech manuscript. Harper clutched it, hands trembling violently. This was history, not something money could ever price. She broke down in tears. All the jeers, the insults, the eyes that called her the mad woman of Clearwater dissolved. The Aurora Belle was not a corpse. It was a cathedral of memory. From the corner, a faint light flickered. Harper turned the beam, spotting an old monitor mounted to the wall. She reached out, and it flickered to life, static buzzing, then stabilizing. A face appeared. An older man with silver hair, in a captain's uniform, eyes piercing. His voice came slow, distorted by tape hiss. "If you are watching this, then I am gone." This ship was never merely for leisure. It carried a greater task. When the world sank into war and greed, those who trusted me placed their most precious memories aboard the Aurora Belle to keep them safe. And there was a woman who helped me hide them, Harper Lane. She knew the treasure was not gold or silver, but the memory of mankind. If you bear her blood, then this is your mission, to continue keeping it. Harper froze. Her mother's name rang out from the old screen, like a voice calling across decades. She placed her hand on the handkerchief binding her wound, tears mixing with dust. In that moment, every doubt was shattered. This wasn't a chance. This was an inheritance. Suddenly, the steel door behind her rattled violently. Hinges screeched, heavy as if about to slam shut. Harper jolted, sprinted. In a heartbeat, had she been slower, she would have been sealed forever in the freezing chamber. She rammed her shoulder, shoved with all her strength, and slipped through just as the door crashed closed, the impact shaking the hull. Harper collapsed on the floor, gasping. Against her chest, the key with her mother's name pressed cold against her skin, heavy as a command. She turned back, staring at the pitch-black vault beyond the sealed door. Inside, the priceless treasure lay still, waiting for its story to be told. That night, Baxter stood at a distance, binoculars raised. A faint glow flickered from the captain's quarters, painting his face with a shadowy grin. He had seen Harper uncover something, and he would not let it rest. But Harper did not know he was watching. She knew only one truth. What the world had mocked as a joke had become undeniable proof. She, Harper Lane, the one ridiculed by an entire town, was the first to touch the legacy the world had forgotten. Rumors about the Aurora Belle exploded after just one photo went viral. A fisherman had casually snapped Harper carrying an empty frame onto the deck to dry, then posted it online. Thousands of comments erupted within hours. She found the treasure. Eyes of curiosity and greed began to turn toward the ship. Harper added more locks and set up old cameras, but the feeling of being watched never left. In the middle of this chaos, Evelyn appeared. The girl ran to the garage one afternoon, clutching a stack of drawing paper. She had heard her classmates mock Aunt Harper, calling her the queen of scrap metal, but Evelyn didn't believe them. "You're always right," she had once told Harper, and today she demanded the chance to prove it. Harper hesitated, then nodded. As the sunset cast a pale red across the deck, aunt and niece stepped onto the Aurora Belle. Small and bright-eyed, Evelyn dashed through the hallways as if exploring an abandoned castle. When the steel door swung open, the cold air rushed out, making her shiver. But instead of fear, she let out a quiet gasp of awe. Harper shone her flashlight inside the vault across the rows of crates, introducing them carefully. Evelyn whispered, as if afraid of disturbing history. She picked a small corner, spread her paper, and began to draw. The pencil's clumsy lines sketched across the page, recreating the bronze statue Harper had just brushed free of dust. Evelyn's eyes sparkled, not because of any million-dollar value, but because beauty had touched her heart. When she bent to pick up a fallen pencil, Evelyn accidentally shook a rotten plank in the floor. Harper quickly pulled it up. Beneath was a small wooden box, its faded seal still faintly visible. Harper pried it open. Inside lay old silver coins, faintly gleaming under the flashlight. Evelyn squealed, eyes blazing. "Treasure, found because of me." Harper looked at her, heart tightening. 2 generations had just uncovered another fragment of memory together. In that moment, Harper understood. This ship didn't just belong to the past. It was a lesson for the future. Evelyn gazed at the coins, then lifted her head and whispered, "Treasure isn't for selling. It's for everyone to see." Harper trembled, tears falling, her hand gripping the old handkerchief tight. Outside, a shadow stood beneath the docklight. Baxter. He watched from a distance, face dark, eyes glinting with ambition. A bodyguard whispered in his ear, but Baxter only nodded, lips curling into a thin smile. He was certain Harper had found something, and he would find a way to take it. Harper had no idea he was lurking. She sat beside her niece in the vault, watching the sketch take shape. The statue emerged on white paper, crooked but alive. Harper realized that Evelyn's innocence mattered more than any headline, trial, or insult. The girl was the reason to continue. That night, Harper added another line to the old notebook. "Treasure is not gold, but the eyes of the next generation." As they left the ship, Evelyn looked back at the Aurora Belle sinking into darkness. She gripped Harper's hand and softly said, "Auntie, I think the ship is waiting to tell its story to the whole world." Harper smiled. For the first time in months, it wasn't a forced smile, but one lit with belief. The rumors turned Aurora Belle into the center of attention. Some believed it was treasure. Others insisted Harper was fabricating everything. To silence the doubt, Harper held a small exhibition aboard the ship. No tickets, no advertisements. Just a simple invitation sent to the very people who had laughed at her the most. That day, the sky was clear. The ship was tidied, halls wiped down, a few crates opened and displayed in the ballroom. When guests entered, no one spoke. They stood silently before the Norman Rockwell painting, its colors still vivid as if untouched by time. An old welder stared at it for a long while, then cried. He whispered, "I once thought you were crazy, but now I see my own past here." The atmosphere shifted. Mockery dissolved, replaced by silence and reverence. Harper stood at the back, her hand clutching her mother's handkerchief, eyes blurred with tears. But Baxter would not relent. Weeks later, he officially filed suit, demanding ownership of the Aurora Belle. He argued that the ship had been abandoned and should belong to whoever had the power and money to exploit it. Harper appeared in court, with only the old notebook and the captain's video. The trial was tense. Baxter's lawyer, glasses perched, spoke endlessly. When her turn came, Harper rose, her voice hoarse but firm. She played the video. The captain appeared, speaking Eleanor Lane's name, entrusting the mission of preserving memory. The courtroom fell silent. Then, from the back rows, the people of Clearwater stood together, holding sheets of signatures in Harper's defense. More than 100 names. Welders, fishermen, teachers, students. The judge's gavel struck. Ownership of the Aurora Belle was granted to Harper Lane. News spread quickly, but this time there was no ridicule. The press called her the guardian of memory. National Geographic reached out. The Smithsonian wanted to collaborate, but Harper did not change her pace of life. By day, she still repaired machines in her small garage. She returned to the ship by night, recording and preserving each artifact. One evening, Harper and Evelyn hung the girl's clumsy sketch beside the Rockwell painting. White paper, shaky pencil lines, next to a masterpiece worth millions. Evelyn looked at her aunt and whispered, "Now the whole world will remember this ship." Harper smiled, hand gripping her mother's handkerchief, as if 3 generations stood together. The following week, the Aurora Bell Floating Museum officially opened. Long lines stretched from children to elders, tourists to scholars. As they stepped onto the deck, the ship's bell tolled deep, resonating across the water. It didn't just announce a voyage, it reminded them that memory had returned. Harper stood at the rail, sea wind tossing her hair. In that moment, she was no longer the poor mechanic once called insane. She was the lighthouse keeper, casting light on lost memories and thoughts. Legacy isn't what we keep, it's what we share. Her words spread across the media, but Harper quietly returned to her work. For her, true victory was not in the courtroom, nor in the headlines, but in Evelyn's smile when she brought friends aboard, and in the tears of the elderly who rediscovered a piece of their past. Late at night, Harper lit a small lamp on the mast. Golden light stretched across the waves. The Aurora Bell was no longer scrap. It had become a lighthouse of memory, guiding stories once nearly drowned in forgetting, now returned to be shared and live on.